I'm just going to do a quick intro. Kat has so graciously decided to join us today. She'll be doing a quick presentation about how to go viral, right? Basically, give us an idea of how we should be looking at marketing for any of our projects. The floor is yours, Kat.
So hi, I'm Kat. I am a digital analyst at Square Enix. So my day-to-day job is that I look at marketing data for most of my day-to-day job and go through it, work out what is working, what isn't. And in my previous role, I was working at Bossa Studios as a marketing manager. So I, again, was looking at all that. And previously, I've worked for companies that work with Amazon and eBay. So I've kind of got a lot of data behind what I'm doing, which is why I like to do presentations on things like how to go viral, because it's what people ask me when they're like, they're like, oh, how do we go viral? Because it feels like a lot of, it's the easy way to get a lot of marketing, which is why I'm going through this, because it makes total sense to me. So I'll get started because it's kind of very self-explanatory, but I'll go through some of the kind of basics and things that you can do, and also kind of go through kind of the fundamentals of marketing to make sure that whatever game you're working on, whatever you're developing, designing, if you're an indie dev, if you're working in a team, if you're working in a larger company, it doesn't really matter. It's all gonna pretty much, it's the same basic ideas. It just depends on the size of how much of it you might be doing. So yes, how to go viral. Don't. Thank you for coming. So the real question is, it's how to provide the best environment to make your game go viral. Now, what I mean by go viral isn't specifically, oh, we're going to go viral across the world, everybody is going to be playing it. I'm more meaning of the kind of how to make sure that your game gets that recognition, how your game gets that visibility, how your game gets that kind of user base that comes from going viral. Now, we can look at a lot of different games that go viral, but the kind of fundamental part of all of them is that they all sell quite well. They all have a pretty decent kind of like brand recognition, and they go from being kind of like the very small indies like Among Us all the way up to like the AAA viral games like Fall Guys, which had a massive marketing budget behind it on top of the work that they did to go viral. So you might have heard of the 4 Ps of marketing. So that's product, price, place, and promotion. These kind of cross, I'm going to say, dimension. Like, it doesn't really matter what you work in, whether it's games, whether it's products, whether it's like television or industry. You still kind of focus on these things. The idea that you need a good product, you need to put it in the right place of sale, you need to have a price that is reasonable and what the consumers are happy to pay, and you need to have promotion behind it. So even if you're not wanting to really do any promotion, you still need to kind of have that promotion behind it. Specifically for virality, though, these 4 Ps kind of change a little bit. So that's more pitch, players, pictures, and promotion. So it's kind of focusing a lot on what we can do to actually make the games sell themselves a little bit. So let's take a look at pitch to start with. So if I told you these games, so there is one imposter, surgery but clumsy. You are an octopus. You are a goose. Wipeout, Takeshi's Castle. It's Knockout the video game. That one's a little bit more country specific because the Americans don't seem to have Wipeout and the Brits didn't really get Takeshi's Castle as much, and I'm not sure which part the rest of the world got. A boring office worker mystery or anime dating sim horror. If I've given you just those little pitches, you can probably think of a game in your brain that goes, oh, I probably know what that game is, without actually describing it too much. So there is one imposter, is obviously Among Us. Surgery but Clumsy is one of the games that I worked on, Surgeon Simulator. You are an octopus is Octodad. You're a goose is Untitled Goose Game. You know these games from the single sentence that they're stated. So when you're thinking of your game, how can people describe it in a very short sentence? Something which really helps when you're trying to sell games is give somebody something that they can explain to their friends easily. This isn't just for video games, this also transfers into loads of other products. Like, if you're going to buy a chair, somebody might be like, oh, you should buy this chair, it's the whatever it is from IKEA, or it's the certain brand of chair. And it helps because people can describe that what it does in a very short sentence. The more complex something is, it can be better, but if you can't explain it simply, it struggles to be communicated cross-person. So I could explain Among Us in a much longer sentence of going, oh, well, it's this game where you've got a lot of people. It's a bit like Werewolf, and we've got one person who's trying to kill everybody and lots of people who are trying to not be killed but complete tasks. And that still explains what Among Us is. But shortening it down to simply there is one imposter or one person is the saboteur kind of simplifies what people can say, and that's how people can then pitch it to their friends. One of the things to know, to kind of understand about virality and more generally about how to pitch a game, is that when we're looking for that short kind of snappy sentence. We're looking for that, why should I buy this game, in kind of a very short thought or a very short tweet. This also translates really well to our visibility point. So when I mentioned before about place being one of the 4 Ps of the generic marketing idea, we need to also think, well, when we're on Steam, we've got a short little banner. When we're on Twitter, we have a short little banner. When we're on PlayStation or Xbox, we have that little tagline that can go underneath our game. And it's about thinking, what can we write in that box? What's that first line that can grab people into trying to play our game? And the more people that you can grab, the more likely it is that your game is going to go viral. Again, it's not a, this is definitely going to go viral. It's more a, these are some things to kind of help it in that way. And it'll also help general marketing as well. So let's have a think about our second point, promotion. So these are blatantly stolen from YouTube, but having a game which allows it to promote itself is a very useful thing. For example, we've got like Pigeon Simulator. That was a game I worked on last year. It went viral on Reddit. Viral. There's no definition for what viral is, but it had a lot of retweets on Reddit and people seem to like it. But the advantage of that was that people could make quite recognizable screenshots, but they could also edit themselves in. There were a lot of GIFs online of actual pigeons, but also we had our pigeon, which we could then put on places. That gave us, providing that to our streamers and giving our streamers the ability to kind of manipulate the game quite a lot was very useful. If you're developing your game, it's sometimes really useful to think, is there somewhere as well where a streamer could put themselves to stream the game? Is there an easy place on the screen where there's nothing going on that they could overlay their face? If there is stuff in all 4 corners of the screen, it becomes very difficult for a streamer to kind of find that perfect place to place their face, because they want to also be on the stream and stream it themselves. So it's sometimes about thinking, just from a UI perspective, can a streamer play our game? Can other people promote our game for us? Have we given streamers, have we given influencers, have we given the newspapers, have we given press outlets the ability to promote our game? Have we provided them with easy screenshots? Have we provided them with copies of the game? Have we provided them with all of these little details? If we can, it's very useful for us to try and do that, so then we can make sure that it gives our streamers the best opportunity for them to stream our game. So again, this is definitely, if you have easy screenshots, if you have a nice way for stuff to get into the game, it's not going to make it easy, it's not going to make it instantly great. But out of those 3 top images for Pigeon Simulator, 2 of them were provided by Bossa to streamers to press directly. You could just get that image. And for the one in the middle, it was just a mashup of 2 images that we provided. It made it very easy for those streamers to make thumbnails for their game. And those thumbnails are quite attractive, so it meant that we were able to go, aha, we know these streamers have now got a really easy way of... It removes those barriers to entry for them to stream our game. That's not to say that they would. There's many other reasons why they did. It helped that we had like a history of games with them, but it also did help that we made it easy for them to do it. And that's something that you hopefully should or can consider when you're building out your game. Is it easy for somebody to stream this game? Have we provided the news, the press, easy ways to both stream it and write about it? Have we provided them with headshots and info and details and price points? Or are we kind of holding that information back? And if we are, why are we holding it back? And is it just to have the ball in our court, or is it for an actual reason? I'll come to a little bit on price later on as well, but like, it's useful to provide these things so that other people can promote your game for you. Because that's what virality ends up being, is lots of people promoting other people's games. So let's take a look at pictures. So these are all little GIFs that were just like, again, quite recognizable of the games that they're from. I've blatantly stolen one of them from one of the games I'm working on at the moment, which is fantastic. But they're quite recognizably visually. And that's something that's quite interesting to consider when you're in development. Is this game visually recognizable? And if it isn't, is that for a reason, or is that because of, like, how can you make it visually recognizable? Like, is it that you're making a game that looks quite visually similar to a lot of other games? For example, if you're making a pixel art game, they can quite often look quite visually a little bit the same, but you're making it because it's a pixel art game. So how can you differentiate your pixel art game from somebody else's? How can you differentiate your first-person shooter from somebody else's? We've got Slime Rancher showing a really great example here of this, where they've got a first-person shooter, and it's a very visually aggressive GIF. It's got lots of colours. It's got quite sharp differentials between the things that you're trying to collect and the environment around it. And it's not particularly groundbreaking to have little blobs, but how the gun works, everything that's kind of in screen, is quite visually attractive, I want to say. And it's the same with a lot of these other games. Like, Untitled Goose Game had a very distinctive visual palette. You could see a screenshot of it from a mile off. There's other games like Papers, Please, again, is a very visually visible game. It's quite recognizable, you can see it. And something to think of when you're looking at what you're promoting is the GIFs that we're putting out quite unique, or are we putting out something that's quite similar to somebody else's? When we're tweeting about something, are we putting out something that's quite visibly distinct, or is it something that somebody could mistake as another game? And if so, is there a reason for that? And if there isn't, can we pick a different item to promote? Because that can help with that, again, brand identity, with that visualization, and it also helps with the virality of it. If somebody can see something and go, aha, I know exactly what game is that from, they're more likely to share it if they can go, yep, I know exactly where this is from. If they have to look a couple or 3 times, you might go, well, do I know where this is from? If we consider Humankind and Civilization, the visuals of the game are quite distinct, but if you just glanced at one of them, you could potentially go, which one is this? That's not a bad thing, considering that both games fit in that same genre, but Humankind have worked quite hard to make sure that their visual style is a little bit more distinct. So, I know I've been talking for a lot. Don't worry, there's not too much more. Well, there's enough. The final point is your players. If you wanted to make a game that goes viral, make it a multiplayer game. If you want your game that you've already existed, that you're developing and that you love and treasure with your whole heart, make it something for people to talk about. What I mean by this is, for example, for multiplayer games, Fall Guys, Among Us, there's a lot of these multiplayer games that give people that multiplayer experience that a lot of people crave. However, multiplayer games are really hard to make. I'm not going to lie, I don't know how anybody does it. Somebody starts talking about servers and my brain kind of goes, aha, yes, servers. And then I just blank out from the rest of it. So multiplayer games are really difficult to make. So when we're looking at the more kind of smaller scale games, or games which have a story or a focus that requires them to be more single player games, or just the scope of the game is a single player game, it's about giving players something to talk about. Give them a conversation to talk about. For example, the Stanley Parable. If we take a look at that as a great example, it had all those different endings, it had people discussing theories and ideas and concepts. And if we look at some other games that are very similar in genre and style, but potentially didn't do as well, we can look at them and go, well, did they give people anything to talk about? Or did they kind of tell all the stories at the end? Was there anything that players could go and be like, oh my goodness, fan theory, this, that, the other? Or did they kind of just leave it? That's not saying that every single game which didn't go viral doesn't have a good story, because all of them do. They're all fantastic. Stories are great. But it's about considering, what are people likely to talk about? If you're playing this game with like a playtester, or you've got in a friend to take a look at it, if they're coming to you afterwards with like I want to know the answers to this question, that's not a prompt to go and put those answers in. It's a prompt to keep those questions in and potentially add in more. Of course, a narrative designer is going to look at this and go, yep, nope, Kat is entirely wrong, and I'm going to say trust your narrative designer on all of that. But it's about having those ideas of giving your players something to talk about. Give your players and your fans something to talk about if it is a single player game. If we look, and it doesn't have to be something complex. Octodad, for example, is octopus. That's still something to talk about. It gives them that conversation topic, the stress, the frustration of it. It gives somebody to backseat game on of going, no, I can do it better. And it's about considering those options. Hades is another example. A lot of people were talking about that. Obviously, it's a very big game. It came from a studio with a lot of renown, but they're still relatively small in the grander scheme of things. It's about thinking about what did they do correct. And one of the things they did do was they had this wonderful story backing it up. And even on games which are relatively simple, like Papers, Please, there's still a lot of, I say simple, it's not actually simple, it's really difficult. Somebody please save me from it. I'm spending too much time on it. But it takes all of those stories and brings them all together and gets you to kind of interweave these stories and make theories and make questions about it. And it gives you that challenge and those conversations to make. And that's one of the things that helps games with that virality. So, to summarize, if we want a game to go viral, aside from putting it out on all the platforms, which I'm going to come to in a second, of make sure that you actually put your game out there somewhere. It's about making sure that your game has a short pitch that somebody can explain in a second. Think of the games that have gone viral. Think about how that you can kind of explain them very quickly, how a news article can capture it and they can still make a pun about it. That's the kind of explanation of game you want. You need some promotion. You need a game that people can promote easily, and you've given streamers, influencers, and the press the tools to promote it, which also is the pitch. Give them a nice byline that they can explain it. Give the pictures. Give them stuff that is visually appealing and visually observable, recognizable to actually the players to see and go, aha, I know where that comes from. And then make a game that your players will enjoy, but also make a game which your players can talk about and your players can chat with their friends about. Because there's nothing more fun than going to somebody and being like, oh my goodness, have you seen this game? It's the best. Have you played it? And they go, no. That's another sale that you've got. And that's another sale that you can then get all of the other people to then talk about. And then it's all that virality. So I know I've spoken a lot about like, here's some things to do. But this is entirely pointless without the kind of basics of marketing. So a quick review of the more general marketing tips. Social media. Put posts on social media. They're good. They're great. Plan as if they're going to go viral. So every time, put a call to action in the post. You can see an example here of Not for Broadcast. They've not actually put a link in it at all, but they've told you what you should feel when you look at that post. They've told you, enjoy this. Ian Higton from Eurogamers said, watch us. Power Washers said, join in and submit your ideas. They've given you the reason why you should be listening to them, why you should be talking, what you should do from their post. If you can tell your players what they should do, they're more likely to do it because it puts the idea in their head. If somebody tells you, share this thing, you're more likely to share it. If somebody tells you, buy this thing, you're slightly more likely to buy it than if they just say, look at this thing. If they tell you to look at this thing, you're going to look at it. It's about putting that front and foremost in somebody's mind of what you want them to do. And always have a clear call to action, and if possible, have a link. Obviously, there's the social media guidelines depending on which place you're posting on, of don't put links in Facebook, put them in the comments, don't put links on Twitter, put it in the second tweet, but have that available. So that if you post something and you go to bed and you wake up the next morning and it's gone viral, the post is there that says, hey, here's where you can buy the game. Hey, here's where you can get this. Here's where you can obtain all this. There's also about press kits and influencers. Make a game easy to market. I know I mentioned this earlier on the have your game that's promotable, but it's have brand guidelines. So brand guidelines is like please don't. It's stuff like, please make sure that you leave some space around our logos and stuff like this. But it should include things like, here is a 1-line pitch for our game. Here is a 2-line pitch for our game. Here is some brand colors. Here is some logos in those brand colors. Here is an easy way to copy and download those logos so you can put them on the stream. Here is some stream assets for you. Here is some overlays and streamer modes and all the things that you can do to try and make your game easy for other people to talk about. And also put all this into your press kit. I'm sure everybody has told everybody, make a press kit. I'm pretty sure I've said it more times than I could possibly ever imagine. But have a press kit and have a press release that is easy to copy. Have a press release that if somebody goes Control A, copies it and pastes it onto a website and sends it straight out, it's going to do well on the SEO and it's going to do well on metrics. It's informative. It tells you where to buy the game. It tells you a summary of the game. Because there's a non-zero number of sites that just do that sometimes. They'll take the main bulk of the press release, copy it, add a top line, add a bottom line, boom, they've written an article. That's not dissing on them, because sometimes that's all you can say about something. But it's useful to try and make sure that you give them that opportunity to do that if they have to. The final thing to remember is about, what are you actually measuring? When you're doing these posts, how can you tell if something has gone viral? The best way to do it is to look at your engagement rate. That's to track your view rate, so that's your views over impressions, your 100% views of videos, your comments and your retweets. Those are going to be your metrics of how you can tell if something has gone viral or if something has not really gone viral. And compare these to your own stats. Don't go and look at like another developer and go, oh, well, they got 10,000, so I should get 10,000. Look at your own stats and go, what is good for me? And then measure that about a 10-time amount. So if I was getting, I don't know, let's say 100 comments, if I then got 1,000 comments, that should be a sign of a viral-ish post for me. If you get 100 times, that's a definite viral post. And it's the same metrics for the others as well. Look at your buy rate and look at your C rate. So look at your impressions, your clicks, your retweets, and your shares. They will help you understand how many people are actually seeing your videos and how many people are seeing what you're making. And your buy rate will track how you're actually making money, because in the end, as much as it's a bit of a dirty word and we all have to pretend that it doesn't happen, we need people to buy the games, because buying games is what pays our salaries and puts money in our pockets and allows us to buy more computers and fun things. Obviously, not with free games, but still we want people to download them and enjoy them and have a good time with them, because we're making them because we love them and we want people to have fun with them. So it's a case of, when we're looking at whether something has gone viral, it's about thinking, what are we actually measuring it on? In most cases, it's going to be your engagement. But in some cases, it might be, have we gone viral from a buy perspective? Have we gone viral from a view perspective? And I know I mentioned at the start, and then I brushed over it very quickly. The 4 traditional P's of marketing: the product, the place, the price, and the promotion. So you've got product of making a fun game. And what I mean by that is, it doesn't have to be fun. It just has to be something which people want to play. Something which people go, I want to go and do this. Having it have a clear gameplay loop where somebody can go, I know where I'm meant to be going. Or if they don't, having that challenge of where they're going and having that journey to where they're going. You don't have to have a game that points somebody in the direction and go, just go. But it's useful to have a game which makes sure that people don't rage quit and get frustrated. And if they do, and that is the point of the game, because I know there are some games that are like that, it's about making sure that they do come back to it. It's giving them that draw back into it. On place, it's making sure that you are on your right platform and you picking your days for release and your days for promotion. I'm sure that you all know this, but generally Tuesdays and Thursdays are quite good days for promotions, just because it means that you then are there right, kind of, you've got a little bit of raise on Friday, you've got a little bit of raise on, you're not missing Monday, because Monday tends to be a dull day, avoiding the weekend so that you don't get a weekend editor, you get a weekday editor. Obviously, this is kind of release schedule stuff, and talk to a publisher or someone that's more of a release manager rather than me. But it's about thinking about where you're placing yourselves, and also what time of the year. It's also about thinking about your cost. So how much does something cost? If it is free, why is it free? What is people's reason to download it? If it is a cost. Think about how much people are paying per hour. So if you're giving out a game that's £10, is it a 2-hour game or is it a 20-hour game? If it's a 20-hour game, you should be charging a bit more than £10. But also consider about things like publisher costs and how much it's actually costing you to make the game, and don't sell yourself short. I know you're all doing this because it's great and it's wonderful, but I feel like I always have to put it in there because otherwise somebody will be like, I marketed my game for £5, and I'm like, please, charge more for your game because it's a great game. And the final bit is promotion. So thinking about like Twitter and Reddit and paid marketing and getting on game shows and game events and stuff. And it's thinking about like getting on Twitter, being on Twitter, talking on Twitter. Replace Twitter with your platform of choice because some people don't like Twitter, and other people like other things, which is always good fun. And it's also about being relevant but edgy. So what I mean by that is try, especially if you want to go viral, you want to be talking about the thing that everybody's talking about, but you want to be doing it before everybody's talking about it. I don't mean edgy in the, ooh, we're cool and we're gonna post memes, like post memes that are relevant, post memes that are new or ones that are timeless, but don't just post stuff for the sake of it. Post things that work for your brand. If you need help on this, I always find that a checklist is useful, so I made you a checklist. Much thanks to Christian Peter Heimbach for this, because he inspired this and I've now updated and edited it. So this is kind of a useful, very short checklist of like, here are some things to think about to make sure that you've done your game right for these 4. Things like screenshot recognition, which is what I said at the very start. Unique selling point. What is your one-line pitch? What is your additions and DLC clarity? Make it easy for people to be able to buy your game. And what is your key art and logos? As I said at the start, make it pretty, make it visual, and make everybody else make it pretty and visual. Think about your place. What platforms are you shopping on? What store assets do you need? What do your trailers work without sound? Do they work without sound? Have you made a trailer? All of these things are things to consider, and I'd highly suggest making a trailer which works perfectly fine both with and without sound, because that's always the best. And then think about bundles and events. For your pay? For your price? Think about your price point. What are other competitors in your area charging? Are you about to put out a game for 40 quid where your biggest competitor, who is releasing 2 weeks before you, charges 10 quid? Okay, maybe you might be a bit too high. Are you the opposite situation then? Maybe you should be charging a bit higher. What's your discount strategy? What's your price parity? So are you charging the same on Xbox and Steam and PlayStation? Are you charging the same worldwide? Are you charging reasonable amounts for the countries that you're selling in? And then it's about promotion. So think about your paid, earned, shared, and owned. So what I mean by that is, are you paying for any marketing? What marketing are you earning? By earning, I mean like influencers, press, etc. What marketing are you getting from shared? For example, people sharing your posts, people talking about your posts who aren't those influencers and etc. And what of it is your own? And owned is where most of your marketing should be starting from, with most of it ending up in earned and shared, with paid being there for if you have the money for it, which most of the time you don't. I say most of the time you don't, most of the time nobody does. Nobody has any money for paid marketing. It's way too expensive, and God, it's so pricey. But yeah, paid marketing's expensive. Yeah. Sorry, I've just had a sudden realization of what my job is, and most of it is just analysing paid marketing and why none of it ever works. Think about your timeline and schedules. When are you discounting a product? When are you marketing a product? Are you awake to market a product after an event that you've been at? And if you're not, have you asked somebody else to market it for you so that people are seeing a tweet about it 5 minutes after they've seen it on a video stream or whatever? And think about your budget and your breakdown. Put some budget into marketing, please. And think about where your budget is going. Are you going to spend money on this or that, on key art or trailers, and how are you going to break it down? Fab. I think that is it. I think I don't have time for questions. I know this has kind of been a little bit of a whistle-stop tour, going a little bit zigzaggy, but I wanted to try and cover a wide breadth of things because marketing is terrifying. And I feel like a lot of people who are game devs either know a lot about it or know very little. And I'm hoping that at least some of you are very little. I've seen that there are questions. So I will read them out and then I will answer them, unless someone else has a more correct way of doing this. I'm going to assume not.
No, you go right ahead.
Fantastic. So one of the questions is, can you post on social media too much? Yes. However, most people who are worried about that aren't getting anywhere close to being too much. A good kind of like rule of thumb is posting on social maybe a maximum twice a day. There's obviously a lot of theories out there of like, oh, you should post at these times or do this or do that. And there is the thing of different platforms are different amounts. Like Facebook, I would say post once a week. Twitter, I'd say once or twice a day. Reddit, about once every 3 or 4 weeks. You don't want to overwhelm Reddit, but you want to be commenting on Reddit much more than you're posting. On stuff like Twitch or YouTube, it's you can very easily stream every day, and you might not get viewers, but it's the best way to rank up those viewers is that regular schedule. And so it does kind of depend a little bit on what everything is going to happen. So when you're doing basically treat every post as a potential viral post, because sod's law, whatever post you assume is not going to be the viral post, your 2 a.m. tweet where you're just making a joke on a bad pun is going to be the post that gets the most clicks and views you'll ever have. So treat it as if everything is a viral post, but still make that 2 a.m. bad tweet with a pun in it, and don't put a link in it if you have to. Put a link in a follow-up tweet in the morning, but don't feel like you have to make every single post perfect, but do treat every post as if it could go viral. So also, I did a talk a while ago on this. Don't assume that like whatever the worst thing is that you ever tweet, assume that's going to go viral. Assume that 4 a.m. rant at a bar is going to be the bit that goes viral, or like something that you don't want to go viral goes viral. And have a plan in place for that. Have a strategy in place for if something that doesn't represent you and your company and your brand and your game, assume something that doesn't represent that goes viral, and think about what you would do to deal with that. So links in the second tweet. It's discussion. I would say like a lot of people do tweets in the first tweet because tweets in the first tweet are really great. Tweets, if you don't want to do them in the first tweet, do them in the second tweet, because that way at least somebody can access that tweet easily. You can also potentially do there's something called cards on Twitter. If you are tweeting, you can go into your ad space. You don't actually have to set up ads, but you have to set up an ads account, and then you can make cards, and cards have an embedded tweet with a video in it as well, with an embedded link, which is super nice. There is a link, I will post it in Crash Course chat, of how to actually there's like a step-by-step guide by Chris, which is fantastic for that. Yes. Link, just put links in all of the tweets. Links and everything. But tell people, again, it's not always about having a call to action that is click my link. It can just be look at this really cool post, or share this with a friend, or I know it sounds stupid, you know those viral terrible posts that you sometimes see on like Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever social media it is, where it's like tag your third at and they're the person that you go on holiday with. Those do really well because of the engagement algorithms, because the algorithms want people to engage with their posts. That's why they always come up and why they're always really annoying, but they do work. Don't do that. Don't say tag your third at. But you could say something like, we've got a copy to give away, tag somebody that you play this with. Or get them to tell people to do something to engage on the tweet. Or like, tell us about a time when this happened to you. Like, so I don't know, like you've got a game-breaking bug. Or tell people, oh, tell us about a time when you felt like this game-breaking bug or whatever. give somebody a reason, tell them what they should be feeling and tell them how they should interact with your post. If you don't tell them, they'll make up their mind, and most people tend to just look at posts. And to get that virality, you want engagement and tweets and all that jazz. And like, yeah, even on stuff like Reddit, it's just an algorithm for upvotes. Press releases, press releases. I think I actually have. I have a presentation on this. It's entirely separate. Press releases should have in them. So you share your press release to game developer, and then also share it to any outlet that you would like to write about your game. So if you're an indie developer, it's totally fine for you to email like IGN and be like, "Hey IGN, here's my game." They will probably ignore you, but if they don't, somebody will write about it and they'll put a post on the website, and then you'll be on IGN. But send a press release with the name of your game, when it's announced, when it's being launched. If the announcement is before, if you're giving them a warning about the announcement, when it's launched, what the price point is going to be if you have it, if you know it, where people can buy it, and then those little lines about the game. So thinking about which I think of, like, if I use Power Wash Simulator as an example, a press release for that could be Power Wash Simulator is coming out of early access on such and such date. The price is going to be this point. Power Wash Simulator is a relaxing simulation game where you clean everything. And that's kind of like a nice single sentence where you can just kind of explain what the game is. It also has those keywords of like, it's a simulation game, it's going to be a relaxing game, it could fall into the group of wholesome games, it could fall into the group of zen games. A lot of those bits kind of all work together, but it's about trying to be clear on what, have that kind of like easy catch line. Then also in your press release, provide an email address for them to reach out to you. Give a note of like your accolades. Like if you've published like 6 games, if this is your 7th game, say it's your 7th game. If this is your first game, say it's the there's a word for first something and I can't remember what that word is, but use that word and then say it's the first game from such and such, and we've worked on this in the past, or this is a first game from this person who has done this or done that. It doesn't matter what it is, but give them something to kind of talk about a little bit. You can also, there's a brilliant press kit. I think it's literally called Press.kit, and it's by Rami, who I think came along a few times ago to talk about press kits. He made it. It's great. There's loads of other options out there, but that's one to kind of start with. I know that Chris, who I mentioned earlier, did one on Notion, which is also a really good choice, and you can also just put one on your website. But your press kit generally should contain screenshots, a kind of simple one line of what your game is involved in, links of where people can buy it, how much it costs, and kind of all the big details about you, your studio, and all the places where people can contact you and give feedback and send emails and put all that stuff in there. So it's really useful. It's sometimes super useful to also have things like, this is our Twitter, this is our Facebook, this is our YouTube. Here are our trailers, and here is our trailers in a downloadable format for you to rehost them on your site. What is the best platform to go viral on that actually translates into sales and wish lists? Reddit. It's the one that I would say most viral games have gone viral on first. I would also say that Twitch is another one. It also very much depends on your game. So this is like, what is the best platform to go viral on? Depends on your game. Which one is most likely to transform into sales? Depends on your game. You could go viral on Reddit, but actually your game doesn't go viral on Twitch, but you gain most of your sales from Twitch. It's sometimes about considering what is going to work best for the specific item that you're trying to go viral with right now. So for example, do you have an in-development video? Okay. Post that to Unity, post that to Unreal, post that to Reddit, and to those, I realised I should have said r/ at the start of those words. Post it to those places and show people your in-development work. And that's a good place to go viral on Reddit. If you have a launch trailer or a release trailer, you're more likely to go viral on Twitter, and you're more likely to go viral on Reddit if it's not you that's promoting it. So if somebody else posts it, that's super useful, especially if they have a long-standing Reddit account, which you can basically hoodwink for views. Like, it's Reddit are quite smart. They'll figure out if you're faking it, but if you can get somebody to post it who genuinely is excited about the game, it's sometimes a really good way to go viral. You can go viral on Facebook, although it's much more difficult nowadays, and you can definitely go viral on YouTube, although again, it's much more difficult. So I would say that probably Twitch, Reddit, and Twitter are going to be your 3 main sources, but also consider places like TikTok. Consider upcoming social media platforms that you might have heard one person talk about. Get on them, be on them, try it once or twice on them. If stuff works, great. If stuff doesn't work, then that's okay. You've not invested too much time. Bail out the platform, close your account, or set your account to for this account is no longer being updated, and point them towards where people can update. Does your advice change on platforms, specifically PC versus mobile? So I would say that generally on PC, on console, on on PC, on console, basically everything is the same because most games are on both. For mobile, I would say that you're a little bit more at the whim of Apple, which I don't like, and you're a little bit more at the whim of Google, which I also don't like. Your visibility depends very much on what they do. And for mobile, especially, your paid comes in a lot more in focus. Just having a viral game isn't enough to be good on mobile anymore. You have to have a game, and you normally have to pay for paid marketing. That's not saying that everybody has to. Obviously, there are some games which do go viral still, but that barrier to entry is so much higher on mobile, despite the fact that there's so many more people who actually are on the platform. Part of the reason for that is obviously because there's so many more people who are on the platform. It's a lot more difficult to get access to somebody who is to become viral when you've got games that do have the marketing budget to churn out virality. Like, for example, that stupid pull the levers game, which isn't actually the game, but it's what they use in all the adverts. That is constantly at the top of Google's download charts because of that bad paid advertising. It's very good paid advertising because it gets people to download it, but it's very bad because it gets people to download a game and it's taking away from your market share. So something to remember on mobile is that it does sometimes help to pay a little bit of money more. But I would also say it's a case of working out what exactly is going to work for your game and your game specifically on mobile, and double down on that. What is the unique selling point of your game? And the catchiness is another thing to think about. Most games on mobile are free. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And you need to work out what is the loop that's going to catch your players in as quickly. You can still do the Reddit, you can still do the Twitter, and it will still work just as well. But you still need to have that link that goes to your store page, that goes to where somebody can download the game, and have that page be accessible and understandable. If your game is paid on mobile, sometimes that can actually work better because they've got Apple have got their Apple Arcade, which obviously is selection only, and Google have got their Google Arcade thing, which again is selection only but allows people to basically play premium games for free. Both of them are ways to get extra visibility, and I'd suggest considering both of them. But it's generally about thinking, what can I do to make my game stand out? And it becomes even more about the little key art when you get to mobile. On Steam and on desktop, the discoverability cues, the discoverability on PlayStation gives you a lot more space to play with, whereas your discoverability on Apple and on Google is normally just a little square. So having a game that's recognizable and uniquely recognizable is even more important on those platforms. Game developer is formerly Gamasutra. So what I mean by call to action. So a call to action is telling somebody what to do. So specifically, I'm going to tell you now to follow me on Twitter. That is my call to action. I've told you, go to Twitter, follow me. I've done it in one sentence. It's very easy. And you now know exactly where to follow me and how to follow me. You know what my name is because I've posted it on here. And I've also given you information of, I've given you a reason to follow me because you just listened to me and I've told you to do it. And you're probably going to do it. The thing is that it's about giving somebody that what they have to do. So a call to action is the action they need to take after this. I could tell you to go and see a movie in the theaters. I could tell you to go and read this new book or look at these reviews. Almost all advertising, once you start hearing this, you'll suddenly start looking at advertising and go, oh, I see what they're doing there. For example, Coca-Cola will do adverts that tell you to enjoy Coca-Cola. And the only way that you can enjoy Coca-Cola is to buy a bottle of Coca-Cola. They'll also tell you to, like other places will tell you, oh, buy this thing, look at this thing, engage with this thing. Most adverts and most advertising generally, and I mean not just paid marketing, but anything that you see, whether it's trailers, adverts, TV, even just on bottles, it will tell you to do something. Even if it's not telling you explicitly do this thing, it will quite often subtly try and point you towards it. The Coca-Cola example, as I just said, but also things like play with your friends is telling you download the game and tell your friends about it without telling you to do that. So a call to action is going to be to always basically tell somebody what to do. What I mean by it doesn't always mean linking is that most call to actions will be stuff like buy the game here, link. Download the game here, link. Do this. If I just go back, like... I just realised I tapped the entirely wrong screen there. If we go back here, we've got Power Wash Simulator, and you can see here, submit your ideas, link. Join in, link. This one from Ian Higton is still a link, even though it doesn't have a link, because if you press on that little play button, it will bring it up. This one, for example, however, from Not For Broadcast, doesn't have a link. It just is telling you, enjoy it. Now, luckily for them, enjoying that stupid teaser of a photo, they did actually get more engagement on that post than they got for basically almost all of their previous posts. And part of the reason was because it's a fun, interesting tweet that makes you think about more, but also they told people to enjoy it. And what people then think of when they go, oh, I need to enjoy this, is I need to provide a response. If somebody says to you, please let me know what you think about this book, or if somebody says enjoy your meal, they expect you to eat your meal and then have an opinion about your meal. And most of the time they want your opinion to be good. But the thing is they want you to, they're telling you, please enjoy your meal. And that's putting the idea that you are going to do that into your head already. So yeah, what I basically mean by call to action is tell somebody what they should be feeling from this post or what they should do from this post. Most of the time you want to tell them to download your game. Most of the time. There's a few times where if you're not telling them to download your game, tell them to submit feedback about your game, tell them to enjoy your game, tell them to get excited about your game, get hyped about your game. You can look at like almost every single, I'm not going to say AAA always, but like a lot of AAA tweets, you'll start to see this pattern coming out of people going, get hyped for such and such, or get excited, and they'll give that person a kind of, this is what you should do snippet. Sometimes it's click a link, sometimes it's have a feeling, sometimes it's engage with a post. But whatever it is, don't just tweet, here's a screenshot of our game. Because you haven't told people what to do about that. And they probably will like it. They probably will retweet it. They probably will comment about it. But there'll also be a lot of people who go, I like that. Scroll. And just never interact with it. Which tells the algorithm to not share your post anymore. Not to pass it on to anywhere else. I hope that makes sense. But yes, the pull the lever games are terrible. And yes, hopefully that will make sense. Fab. I don't know if anyone else has any other questions, because I've also been talking a lot, and I thought I'd drink this entire can of drink, and I haven't, so my voice is very dying.
Actually, I think you handled everything pretty well. There was a lot of information in that presentation, and wow, I'm not sure
I
if
will
I have
also
any.
share it. I will also share it in the chat afterwards.
That would
So
be
if anybody does
excellent.
have any questions, and as I said, if anybody does also have any questions, you can follow me on Twitter and drop me a message, and I will happily answer most of them, provided that I have time. You're welcome to email me, and I'm happy if you tweet at me that I'll be able to send my email. Just because like every game is going to be marketed differently. I don't think I've ever seen two games marketed the same, and both of them have worked. So yeah, Like, just experiment, go wild, do what you want. What should you do? Yes. Yeah.
All right. So to summarize, is how to go viral. Don't. What should you do? Yes.
Yes.
Cool.
Thank you so much for coming to my TED Talk. That's basically it. Yeah. Don't go viral and do whatever you like on marketing, but just commit to it. Do everything the best that you could do and be excited about stuff. And just talk about things that you like and things that you want. And whatever your game is, it's going to assume that it's going to do great and act as though it already has. And you'll probably do better than if you act as though it hasn't. Like, have that big, like, imposter syndrome energy there and just be like, yeah, my game's great. And I'm going to treat it as if it is. And I hope
All right.
that's helpful. I hope this has been at least vaguely useful, if for nothing else, to tell you that your game's great and it's all going to be wonderful and it'll all work out in the end. And if it doesn't, that's not my fault and you can't blame me for anything.
One final question from Macaroni Jam, I think, if you're not too bad.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Fire away.
Wait, is it okay? I can just say it?
Mhm.
I was wondering if you're okay, let's say like your game has like somewhat of a lot of mechanics or a lot of things about it. Like how would you like decide the pitch would be, the one sentence pitch if your game has, a lot of things?
So
Hopefully that question makes sense.
It makes total sense because it is a difficult thing because we don't just want to make a boring game, do we? We want to make something that's really interesting. If we think about what is the thing that makes your game unique? Why do people want to play it? If you can't think about that, because there's quite often a lot of things, it's quite often sometimes useful to get people to go away and play your game and get them to tell you what was the one thing that stood out to them. And it's okay as well to have a couple of these different pitches. If we think about Final Fantasy, which I know is literally the biggest game in the world, but it's also really complex. If we look at, like, for example, it's a very social game. Okay, well, we've got a pitch about social game. It's a guilds-based game, so we can talk about the guilds. It's got a lot of combat and fighting, and it's got a really interesting leveling up and grinding system. We can talk about that. They have multiple of these short pitches to be able to explain the game, and it's okay to have a couple of them. But try and work out what's the one that you want to tell everybody in the conversations that you're having. If we think about other games, for example, a lot of the time it's actually really difficult to try and think of a game which has a really complex pitch, but let's consider Civilization or Humankind. It's a 4X game, and the way that they simplify this down is they've just gone, it's a 4X game. And that's their one-line pitch. Most people who like a 4X game are probably going to try a 4X game because there's so few of them around. Whatever your game is, I would say get somebody else. I'd say two things. One, get someone else to play it and get them to describe it to you in a word or a sentence. So it doesn't have to be just one sentence, a couple of sentences, and see what sticks out to them and get a couple of people to do that who haven't played the game before and get them to explain it back to you. It's a technique that's quite often used in education as well, of like, explain it back, because if you can explain it back, then you actually understand it. And if they can't do that, how long did it take them to play the game? How long did it take them to tutorialize it? Is there a nice, easy way that you can step somebody into the game, for example? If we think about a lot of these more complex games that have lots of ideas, like XCOM, for example, we can still simplify that down to you're going to control a team who shoot people. There's loads of complex systems that run in that. There's the building a team, there's the buying a team, there's the working out who goes on missions, dealing with permadeath, dealing with all these different encounters. But in the end, you're trying to fight aliens and you have a team who tries to fight the aliens. You're managing that team, you're running that team. Think about how you could describe your game like that. So it doesn't always have to be exactly, these are going to be all the mechanics that you encounter, but think about what's the overall reason why someone should play this. And if you can't simplify it down to a couple of sentences, it's a case of maybe consider what you need to cut or what you need to boost to be able to simplify it down to those couple of sentences. That's not saying that a game is bad or game is not good or game is too challenging or not challenging enough. But it's about you want something where people can explain it. And if you can't explain it in a very simple way, that's going to put off some consumers from going, I want to buy this game. Even like, you can probably think of almost every single game which is very complex and how it simplifies down to it. And I'm assuming that there's probably, if there's a very complex system, there's probably a story behind it. You can just go straight into the story and be like, yo, story. Summary of the story. You can go straight into the mechanics and go on one mechanic and talk about that mechanic. And it's okay to try a bunch of these until you find one that works as well. So it's okay to be like, I have a one-liner for my mechanics and a one-liner for my story and a one-liner for my gameplay, but have them and know what they are. So sometimes also you'll see on like Steam, they'll have like a couple of kind of like banners almost, what are they called? Like titles, like you'd have a little GIF and be like game features and here's the thing. Like I'm looking at I literally brought up the first game that's on my list that's come up as Eastward, and it literally said travel the world, fight or fry, mix things up, small town life, alfresco dining, retro beats. These are multiple reasons why people might buy the game. If you can think of a sentence for each of them, that's great. Every time that you show a GIF of that of the thing that it's describing, put that sentence with it. Does that kind of make sense? Hopefully.
Oh yeah, it answered my question. Thanks.
It's not an easy thing to do, trust me. I've had to do it for a couple of games which were I started off with a sentence and it ended up as a paragraph, and I was like, oh boy, how do I deal with this? And I kept breaking it down and none of it really worked. And then I would break something else down, I'd be like, well, that sentence doesn't really work. And it's fine. It's fine to do that. It's just when you're on Twitter, you do have that limit of characters. When you're on Facebook, you have that bit before it says see more. If you can get a sentence or get your game described before that cutoff from social media, it does help with that visibility. That's not to say a game which doesn't do it is bad. I'm just saying it helps with that social media. It helps with the marketing of it, which I feel is really bad. I always feel bad when I'm like, please cut your games down, because I'm not meaning that. I'm just meaning describe it simply, if that makes more sense, hopefully. I feel bad. I always feel bad whenever I tell people anything. But yeah, I hope that is useful and explanatory, and hopefully I feel bad. I'm sorry. I just always feel bad constantly whenever I have to tell anybody anything about their games, because I'm like, I don't know anything. But then I go and look at all the work that I know, and I'm like, yeah, I know a lot of things. But yeah, try and explain your game simply, and yeah. It's also fun because it gives you that challenge of trying to explain something really simply. I've a challenge that I got given when I used to be a teacher, and a challenge I got given then was, can you explain quantum mechanics to a 5-year-old? And it's very difficult to do, but once you've done it once and a 5-year-old goes, oh yeah, I understand what quantum mechanics is now, it suddenly realizes that you can explain anything as anything. And that's kind of always really, it's a fun challenge to do. I say fun. It might just be me that finds it fun. If anyone else doesn't have any questions, I am probably going to head to bed and go and wake up tomorrow morning for work bright and early. Should hopefully all be good, unless anyone has any questions. And if not, I'm going to leave it.
I think that is it. I just have to say thank you again. And I will post your Twitter link in the chat. And Graham Schultz, thanks so much, Kat.
No worries. If anyone does have any questions, feel free to reach out. But otherwise, hopefully this has been at least vaguely useful on marketing and virality and how all these weird things just go viral for no reason. And hopefully you can all look at your, like, not just your, but other people's social media from now on and be like, oh, I see why this got good numbers, or I see why this did badly compared to their other posts. Yeah, I will see you soon. Bye-bye.